Hey everybody, it's Zach and I like movies, and it's time for a review of the new Anna Kendrick movie called Woman of the Hour. This is a movie starring and is actually the directorial debut of Anna Kendrick that just came to Netflix a few days ago. And it is about Anna Kendrick as this woman named Cheryl. She's an aspiring actress in mid to late 70s Los Angeles, and she went on who goes on the dating game. Kind of as like her agent kind of puts her like, hey, it'll get her notice, and she goes on the dating game, which is like this like old this old game show from like back in the old Chuck Berry game show back in the day. Ask your grandparents if you still got them. And what's interesting is that this is based on a true story. One of the bachelors of this episode of the dating game is a serial killer. Like, that actually happened. His name was Rodney Alcala, and when he was on the dating game, he was between crime sprees, and you can actually watch. And it's sort of it's something that feels like either like some kind of like kitschy horror movie pitch, but it actually was this kind of stranger than fiction true event. Like, you can actually look up like clips of it on YouTube, and you can see like Rodney interact, being on the show, interacting, getting laughs out of the crowd, and it's fascinating and really creepy too. But I feel like a movie on paper, a movie kind of about that could be there's worry that it could have led into this like sort of true crime podcast episode based off of like a damn that's interesting Reddit post. But but honestly, what Anna is able to get out of this material, out of this story, is a really interesting and often horrifying movie about women's intuition, about the men, about dangerous men, and the downplaying that they have to go through. While I was watching this movie, I kept being reminded of that. Like a couple months back, there was this like viral hypothetical question that getting posed on like TikTok and Reddit and all the social medias about being posed to women. What would you rather be alone in the woods with, a bear or a random man? And a lot of women chose the bear, and people like men couldn't understand why would you choose the bear, and this movie is kind of illustrating why women choose the bear, because there's this constant, there is this like this feeling that you never the women that we follow in this movie, both Anna's Cheryl and the women that Rodney murders. But the movie jumps around in time. I'm back and forth. When we're following Cheryl, and then we meet another woman that is one of Rodney's murder victims, and there is this like constant question in the back of their mind. Will you hurt me? Would you try to hurt me? Or even just this even this sort of like benign sort of like being looked down on by them. Whether it's Cheryl being talking to me in an audition, and the casting directors are just really either not paying any real attention to her, or they're just being very snippy and demeaning to her, or even the sort of babying men's emotions that women have to do, whether it's this potential whether they're of this potential date that could go bad or not, or even just like how Cheryl interacts with this friend she has, who's played by a surprise Pete Holmes appearance. It's who is clearly into her, and it feels like she feels like if she doesn't he tries to kind of make a move, and it goes bad, yeah, and it just totally totally flatlines, and he's obviously obviously upset, but she still feels that she has to kind of be rub salve on his emotional wounds, and just kind of baby him to make him feel better, just just in case, because you know what she doesn't know what he could do. He doesn't know what he would do. Like sure, and that's sort of like kind of the core idea of Woman of the Hour, or just how it feels to not know if you are being preyed upon, and that sort of is doubled up when one of the men that could be preyed upon is an actual predator, and like and Rodney in this movie, who's played very well by Daniel Zovatto. He's an actor I'm not entirely familiar with. He's made some appearances in movies I've seen, like It Follows and Lady Bird, but I really thought he really held his gave a good showing out here. He does here because and what's especially interesting is that when you compare this movie like side by side with the clips that you can watch on YouTube, it's interesting that Anna just completely chose not to do a one-to-one recreation. Like it's more like evoking. It feels more like it's sort of based on that idea, on that story about serial killer on the dating game, more than just like doing like core like oh it's just like so dead on especially like in comparing Rodney in both the clips and this movie, because Rodney is much more like kind of this boyish look. There's just boyish charms to him, and of course, like the makeup and the hair is much different. Like everyone, including the woman on the show, she had this like big full hair, that big Farrah Fawcett mane of hair. The dress is nothing the same. I think the host is even different. Which, by the way, the host in the movie is played by Tony Hale, who it's Buster from Arrested Development, and he's quite great in this movie too. And what's interesting, it's interesting because like Rodney in the movie, he's a little more like visually, like you just kind of look at him and you're like, oh yeah, that's a creeper. Like that's a real creep. That guy, I don't know what that guy is up to, but it's not good. But but it's interesting that the way that he's able to mask that, show, just kind of lay on some charm, when he's like, either when he's like, getting laughs out of the audience and like, getting them on his side, or just kind of like just sort of approaching these women and sort of like luring himself into their gravity, and how he's able to like sort of get close to them and just take them to advantage. And it's sort of, and it is sort of like it is a creepy movie in that sense, which I think is helped. Which I think like real, but I don't think that like sort of creep factor doesn't really kick in until like after the first act. Like when it takes a bit for her to get on the show. Oh, and when that does happen, that's when like the sort of like tension can like really start to rise up. And if you and I would also say that there are some like choices in the script that feel a little shaky. I'm not entirely sure if the jumping around back and forth works quite well. I mean, I understand what they're going for, but I also wonder if some of the cuts don't feel quite as don't feel either as motivated, or feel like they flow or they like flow super cleanly. Sometimes they do. Like there's a really sharp cut towards the end of this movie that really got me. And I would also say that the like costuming is a little just kind of like plain as far as like 70s movies go. But that being said, I feel like Anna's direction here is really elevating really elevating the material here, again, in the way that the camera is framed and the way that the actors are blocked, and the performances that she gets are really good too. Again, like Daniel Zovatto, it's not easily comparable to like the footage, and I am impressed. I am glad that she made that decision, and he really does great with his own scenes and with the other women. And I also really like the decision to kind of like linger, not from we're not following following Rodney in the flashbacks, we're focused on his victims and how they are seen, how they feel looked at. And this movie does some really cool, there was really fun things about like using the camera as a tool for voyeurism in kind of an interesting way, because Rodney, he had like thousands of photographs of his victims and people he tortured and like killed, and this movie like highlights a lot about how like the camera is also like a form of like being watched, being looked at, being leered at. There's like a really impressive shot where of the camera on the game show, and it's pulling back as we're pulling, like the camera is pulling back on on the lens of the camera on the game show as Anna's Cheryl is in that, just kind of like almost looking lost. It was a really impressive shot, and there's also like some impressive. Again, I'm kind of repeating myself, impressive, but I was impressed. I also really liked the nature shots, the nature photography here. I could kind of tell that it was inspired by the likes of like Terrence Malick and Agnes Varda, just sort of further highlighting the contrast of both the beauty of this world and the ugliness of taking these women away from this world and robbing them of their potential. And the camera work I thought was really good. And oftentimes, like when this material is really working on with like the suspense and just the palpable sense of dread and menace, sometimes it's like this movie really sings. Especially in that third act, that has a really just absolutely bone-chilling moment when a conversation goes from pleasant and comfortable to it makes that turn. We're like, oh yeah, when you realize that, oh yeah, when like she realizes I am being preyed upon, and she even. There's even like small little acting performances from some of the other smaller one scene roles. There's a janitor. There's a scene with the janitor that was a pretty memorable. And there's one with a waitress. Anna just like looks at the waitress and just goes, and she follows through, and then you get a scene in a parking lot that's kind of that scene, a scene that a lot of women really fear, just walking, just trying to get across in a parking lot to your car, knowing that there's a man behind you following you, and it really was a nail biter scene, and it really tense, and I really liked it. I would recommend you watch this. It's probably not a great movie, but I do think it's an exciting movie, both in like what it chooses to focus on. Like the highs of this movie, I think will get people talking. It certainly will kind of understand, like help people understand like why women feel the way they do around men they don't know, and or at least like illustrate why they feel that way. And there's a lot of there's some, again, really great shots. I'm really excited to see what Anna Kendrick can do as a director, because I think this was very exciting, a really confident debut as a director. My full compliments to Anna. It's on Netflix right now. It's a breezy movie. It's like 90 minutes and change. It moves right along, and very exciting. I can't wait to see what Anna does next. I would give this a solid 7. It's definitely can recommend this. And that'll be it for the review. I'm Zach. I like movies. I have a lot more movies to watch. There's a lot more movies out there, and I hope you watch all of them, or at least as much as you can. And I will see you all next time.